How are you, Darren? Good to be back, and thank you for having me on Near FM again. You've been very kind to Dog Advocacy Ireland, so it's much appreciated.
All right, cool. Okay, John, it's been a while since our last interview on Near FM. Leading us up to talking about the meeting you attended in Leinster House last week, can you give our listeners today on Near FM, John, a bit of a summary, please, of what you have been doing in general with Dog Advocacy Ireland since the beginning of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was invited to a cross-party meeting in Leinster House on Wednesday, July the 2nd, and I was there along with My Lovely Horse, who are a fantastic organisation, as you know, and most listeners will be aware of. They're a fantastic organisation, and in collaboration with My Lovely Horse Rescue, I had an input into their presentation. Okay, My Lovely Horse presented. I was there. I had an input, and there were cross-party politicians who attended, and some of whom participated and took an active interest. This was all about dog/stroke animal welfare, and the negligence of the whole area of animal welfare, and how successive governments have failed miserably, and they have all failed. So I'm not pointing fingers at any particular party here, but successive governments have failed miserably. Just from the point of view of dogs. I mean, again, you've heard me mention this before, and your listeners will have heard me say it. Ireland, to our shame, is puppy farm capital of Europe. That is a shameful accolade to hold, that we're puppy farm capital of Europe. And what does that mean? It means there are dog breeders stroke puppy farmers out there making a fortune in breeding puppies for the home market and for the export market. And their only interest is the money. They have little or no interest in the poor dogs and the poor puppies that are sold as soon as it's legally permissible to do so, after 8-10 weeks, I think it is, right, in Ireland. It's different in the UK, slightly different in the UK. But yeah, they're sold off as quickly as they can, right? So there is no petting, and there's no care taken of these puppies. They're just ATMs. They're ATM machines. That's how they're treated. And this industry is worth 200 million. I'll repeat it again. 200 million per year this industry is worth, and it's not being regulated, it's not being governed properly, and there are no inspections taking place. So it's a free-for-all to abuse and mistreat puppies and breeding bitches. They're kept imprisoned in these hellhole torture chambers. And I'm using language that I make no apology for. I'm not being dramatic. That's how these dogs are living. Most people who have a dog, they take the dog out for a walk, they go for a walk in the park, and, allow the dog to sniff and forage and all the rest. That's normal, natural behavior for most dogs. These puppy farm dogs do not get that opportunity at all. They're imprisoned, they're used as just breeding machines, and the puppies are sold off as soon as it's possible to do so.
I was talking to Councillor Maurice Dockrell from Blackrock and Fine Gael yesterday, and he was telling me that in 2013, this is in relation to animal welfare in general, but not just dogs. But he was saying in 2013, good legislation at the time came in for animal welfare. But he was saying, and his party are in government, even he's saying this, there's a need for new legislation. What are you calling for, John, specifically?
Well, I know Councillor Maurice Dockrell, and he's a very good man in terms of his interest, and his real interest, genuine interest in dog/stroke animal welfare. He's attended some demonstrations that I've been at, so he's genuine, and he's right. The Animal Health and Welfare Act that he's referring to, which the Department of Agriculture has responsibility for, that was introduced in 2013. So he's right, 12 years ago. But while the legislation, there's quite a lot of good features in that legislation. Okay, some of it could be amended, some new legislation could be drafted and included in it. But what the biggest issue is enforcement. There is no enforcement. So it's a bit pointless. We might as well not have the legislation if it's not being enforced. So again, back to the puppy farms, they're not being inspected. There are no reports of inspections. The inspections aren't happening in the first place. So, if I'm running an operation that's bringing in huge income streams and I'm not being regulated, I can basically do what I like, right? That's not good. That's not good. And hence, because of the lack of governance and the lack of interest shown in dog welfare in particular, but animal welfare in general, this is why Ireland is puppy farm capital of Europe, and successive governments, I'm afraid to say, are complicit. They might not like to hear that, but they're very complicit. And I just want to mention, Darren, if I may, Dublin North region, for example, is fairly well represented with heavy hitters in the current government. Like, for example, Pascal Donoghue, Fine Gael, is the Minister for Finance. Jack Chambers is the Minister for Public Expenditure. Darragh O'Brien is the Minister for Transport, Climate, Energy and the Environment. And then we have the leader of Sinn Féin, Mary Lou MacDonald, all Dublin politicians, and three of whom that I've just mentioned are members of government, are ministers in the cabinet. So I would be calling here a kind of a new angle on this, because there's such huge money involved. 200 million is a significant sum of money, and when we look at the level of abuse and barbarity and mistreatment of dogs that's going on and taking place, I feel that it's time that CAB ought to be called in, because there's huge earnings. There's one individual who brags and boasts about earning 20 grand, I'll repeat, 20,000 euro per week from his activity. And this guy is the biggest exporter of puppies to Singapore. So now I think these people ought to be audited by revenue, and CAB needs to get involved here to investigate this industry that's been permitted to continue unabated and unpunished and unregulated, basically. So yes, I'm talking about senior ministers becoming involved here. Pascal Donoghue is Minister for Finance. He needs to take an interest.
John, did you think anything substantial or good came out of your meeting in Leinster House last week?
Well, I felt it was productive. I mean, again, I have to congratulate My Lovely Horse, my good friends at My Lovely Horse Rescue, for an excellent presentation. They presented the situation as it is currently, and the negligence involved, and what needs to be done, and what they're calling for, and which I endorse completely. Then we're talking about setting up of a Garda-led animal welfare unit. Okay, that needs to happen. So to stop this criminality and this barbaric abuse and mistreatment of dogs and horses that, My Lovely Horse are specifically interested, but not solely. My Lovely Horse rescued dogs as well as horses, So what they're calling for is pretty basic stuff, but it needs to happen. We need action, And in fairness, there were politicians in attendance, of maybe 25 or 30 politicians in attendance who were interested, and some of whom asked very pertinent questions. And I engaged, and I'm sure My Lovely Horse did, after the meeting. We had our conversations, and I made some pretty good connections there with politicians who are genuinely interested in dog/animal welfare. And, in fairness to them, they are interested. So progress will be made on the back of that meeting. And I'm hoping that there will be further such meetings and such presentations to members of the Oireachtas, through that vehicle there in terms of cross-party meetings and presentations.
And you're saying there about My Lovely Horse, they do, like yourself, they do fantastic work. And although they're based in Kildare, they actually work nationally, and a lot of their work is in Dublin, isn't it? So they are dealing with animal cruelty cases every week, aren't they?
Absolutely. Look, I'm singing their praises for a long time. I've huge admiration for My Lovely Horse Rescue and the work they do. They're the only organisation in the country, right? Just if listeners can hear this, My Lovely Horse go to rescue situations, to rescue horses and dogs and other animals from very difficult situations, and animals sometimes who are on their last legs because they've been mistreated and abused and neglected. My Lovely Horse go out to these rescue situations. Like, they operate 24/7, 365 days a year. There is no state organisation that does that. So it's left to a charity, and My Lovely Horse is a charity. So they do tremendous work. I've seen them. They post stuff on social media, little video clips where they're going in the dead of night to a scene where they've been called and they've been notified about an animal, a horse or otherwise, who's in a very difficult condition and needs to be rescued, and given veterinary treatment. They do this all the time. So they're a fantastic organisation, and I'll never stop singing their praises.
Okay, John, it's great talking today in the RFM again. Just before you go, I believe that Dawn and Shannon are under summer breaks in the next couple of weeks. They'll be off for, I think it's rest of July and August, back in September. Do you think there are much grounds for hope or optimism that if not over the next couple of weeks, that by the time the government and Dawn and Shannon come back in September, that there will be some kind of a move on this by government on animal welfare in general and dog welfare?
I'm very hopeful, Darren, and yes, it all goes into recess for the summer, and we'll be back in September, I think it is. But I will be working with one politician, if not a few of them, in particular, in relation to parliamentary questions which will be submitted, and some of those questions will be submitted before the Dáil goes into recess. So I will be working with politicians over the summer. So even though it may not be sitting, work is being done, and I'm very hopeful that progress is being made.